Right now, as you watch this, an 844-foot warship is turning into the wind somewhere in the Arabian Sea. On its flight deck, an F-35B stealth fighter is spooling up for another launch. The deck crew moves in choreographed silence, lit by the glow of the island's superstructure, because this happens at night too. It has been happening day and night for weeks. The ship is the USS Boxer, and at this moment, it is the amphibious assault ship enforcing America's naval blockade of Iran. 7 commercial vessels have been turned away from Iranian ports since the blockade resumed. 1 was disabled at sea. American airstrikes have hammered Iranian military targets night after night, more than 10 consecutive evenings and counting. And in the middle of all of it sits a 40,000-ton ship that most Americans have never heard of, carrying more than 2,000 Marines who are ready to go ashore if the order ever comes. This is what the Boxer is doing against Iran right now, and how a ship commissioned in 1995 ended up at the center of the most dangerous naval confrontation in decades. Start with the name, because the name is older than the United States Navy's steel fleet itself. In 1813, during the War of 1812, an American brig defeated and captured a British warship called HMS Boxer off the coast of Maine. The U.S. Navy took the name as a trophy, and it has been passing it from hull to hull ever since. The ship sailing off Iran today is the 6th American warship to carry it. She was built at Ingalls Shipbuilding in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and commissioned in February 1995, which means the hull now holding the line in the Arabian Sea is 31 years old, older than most of the sailors and Marines walking her passageways. And yet from a distance, the Boxer looks like something far newer, an aircraft carrier that shrank in the wash. That resemblance is deliberate. She is a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, hull number LLHD-4. One of 8 ships in her class, displacing roughly 40,000 tons with a flight deck running the full 844 feet of her length. That deck operates MV-22 Osprey tilt rotors, attack helicopters, heavy lift transports, and the aircraft that changes the entire equation, the F-35B Lightning II, the short takeoff, vertical landing version of the most expensive fighter program in history, roughly $100 million per aircraft. The F-35Bs aboard belong to Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 122, and they do something no carrier jet can do. At the end of a mission, the jet slows to a hover, a lift fan behind the cockpit screaming, and descends onto the deck like a helicopter. No catapults, no arresting wires, no 4.5 acres of supercarrier required. A 5th-generation stealth fighter operating from a ship 1/3 the size of a Nimitz. But the flight deck is only half the story, because below the waterline the Boxer hides something no carrier has. A well deck. It is a cavernous bay in the stern that the crew can deliberately flood with seawater, lowering the ship's stern until the ocean rolls in through an open gate. Out of that flooded bay come hovercraft, landing craft air cushion, riding on skirts of air at over 40 knots, and armored amphibious vehicles that swim ashore under their own power. A carrier projects power from the air. The Boxer projects power from the air and onto the land itself. That is the entire reason amphibious assault ships exist, to put Marines on a hostile beach, anywhere on Earth, against resistance. Step inside the hull and the scale keeps unfolding. Nearly 1,100 sailors run the ship, and when the Marines embark, the number of people aboard climbs past 2,500. A floating town packed into steel corridors, with its own gyms, a post office, mess decks feeding thousands of meals a day, and berthing compartments stacked with bunks 3 high. Deep inside sits one of the most surprising spaces in the fleet, a hospital, with operating rooms and dozens of ward beds, medical capability that among American warships is second only to the Navy's dedicated hospital ships. The logic behind it is grim and practical. A ship designed to put Marines onto a hostile beach has to be ready to take casualties back off it. Every square foot of the Boxer is proof that someone thought this through decades ago. The Boxer does not do this alone. She is the flagship of a 3-ship formation the Navy calls an Amphibious Ready Group. Sailing with her is the USS Portland, a San Antonio-class amphibious transport dock, and the USS Comstock, a Whidbey Island-class dock landing ship that entered service back in 1990. The Portland carries additional aircraft and landing craft. The Comstock is the workhorse, her own well deck loaded with the amphibious combat vehicles the Marines would ride ashore. Spread across those 3 gray hulls is the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. Out of Camp Pendleton, California, roughly 2,200 Marines built around Battalion Landing Team 35, an infantry battalion known as Dark Horse, plus a composite aviation squadron and a logistics element. The aviation piece pairs the stealth fighters with MV-22B Ospreys that can carry Marines hundreds of miles inland in a single lift and attack helicopters armed with laser-guided missiles. The Marine Corps calls this structure a Marine Air-Ground Task Force, and the concept is simple to state and hard to overstate. It is a complete, self-contained military force. Its own infantry, its own jets, its own helicopters, its own trucks, fuel, ammunition, and doctors. It can run a non-combatant evacuation on Tuesday and an amphibious assault on Friday without waiting for a single reinforcement. None of them expected the deployment to unfold the way it did. The war between the United States and Iran began on February 28th. By mid-March, the fighting was entering its 4th week. The Strait of Hormuz was effectively closed to commercial shipping, and the Pentagon made a decision that tells you everything about how serious the situation had become. The Boxer Group deployed from San Diego roughly 3 weeks ahead of schedule. Certification exercises were barely complete when the ships pulled away from the pier, the Boxer leaving on a Wednesday, the Portland and Comstock following a day later. By the end of March, they were in Pearl Harbor, the Boxer gliding past the memorial of the battleship Missouri on her way in, 3 weeks of ocean behind her and an unknown mission ahead. When reporters asked the Secretary of Defense what the Marines would be used for, he refused to say, answering that you don't tell your enemy what you're willing to do or not do. Behind that silence, the numbers kept growing. More than 50,000 American service members already in the region, thousands of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division on the ground, and now 2,200 Marines crossing the Pacific toward the fight. Through April and May, the group worked west, and there was even a detour along the way, flight operations in the South China Sea in early June, a reminder that the Navy was stretching one Amphibious Ready Group across 2 theaters at once, before the ships pushed through the Indian Ocean toward the Middle East. By June 30th, Central Command confirmed it publicly. The Boxer Amphibious Ready Group was operating in the Middle East. She arrived at exactly the wrong moment, or exactly the right one, depending on where you were standing. What followed was a month of whiplash. In June, Washington and Tehran reached an interim peace deal, a memorandum of understanding meant to quiet the guns and restart diplomacy. The blockade was lifted. Talks began on fully reopening the strait, halting Iran's nuclear program and ending the war for good. And almost immediately the deal began to crack. Attacks tested the truce again and again, each side accusing the other of violating the agreement they had just signed. Then Iran targeted commercial ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz, and the American president declared the truce over. Washington's answer came fast. On July 14th, At 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time, the United States reinstated its naval blockade of Iranian ports. 1 hour before the blockade took effect, American strikes resumed, hitting dozens of military targets along the Iranian coast in a single 7-hour wave. Missile sites, drone storage facilities, naval bases, coastal defense systems. More than 20 American warships and hundreds of aircraft are now operating across the region. And the stated mission is blunt: degrade Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping in a waterway that normally carries about 20 million barrels of oil every single day, with nearly a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas trade moving alongside it. The strait is 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point. The world economy breathes through it. If seeing this conflict from the deck of the ship enforcing it changes how you understand naval power, this channel goes inside stories like this one every week, and subscribing is the easiest way not to miss what comes next. So what does a blockade actually look like in practice? Not like the movies. It looks like radar contacts and radio calls. A merchant vessel steams toward an Iranian port, and somewhere over the horizon, American aircraft are already watching it. The challenge comes over the radio. The ship is ordered to alter course. Since July 14th, at least 7 commercial vessels have been redirected this way, turned around before they could enter or leave Iranian ports. One ship did not comply. American forces disabled it at sea, stopping it dead in the water rather than letting it transit. That is the entire logic of a blockade compressed into a single incident. Every ship gets a choice, and the choice is not optional. The pressure is not one-directional either. Iran's allies have raised the stakes from outside the strait, with the Tehran-backed Houthis threatening to blockade Saudi Arabia in response, while mediators quietly pass proposals between the two capitals on how to step back from the edge. None of it has slowed the tempo. Night after night, the strikes continue overhead. By July 20th, Central Command had announced a 10th consecutive day of attacks, each round grinding down the missile batteries and drone sites Iran uses to threaten the shipping lanes. The blockade seals the door. The airstrikes dismantle the weapons pointed at it. Through all of it, the Boxer has been flying. Central Command released the photographs in late July. F-35Bs launching in daylight, helicopters recovering in darkness, a flight deck that never fully goes to sleep. The stealth fighters give commanders something unusual for an amphibious ship, a strike and air defense capability that can operate near contested coastline, while the Ospreys and helicopters keep watch over the sea lanes below. Every launch and recovery is a message Tehran can read without a translator. The ship is here, the aircraft are armed, and the tempo is not slowing down. For the flight deck crews, the days blur into a cycle that repeats around the clock: fuel, arm, launch, recover, respot, and start again. The Arabian Sea in July pushes deck temperatures well past 100 degrees, and the work happens in flame-resistant gear under jet exhaust, a few feet from spinning rotors. This is the part of a blockade no press release captures. Not the strikes themselves, but the sustained, grinding routine that makes the strikes possible. Then, in the third week of July, the Boxer's role changed again. The USS Tripoli, the other big-deck amphibious ship in the region, departed the Middle East along with her embarked Marines. Their exit left the Boxer Group and the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit as the amphibious force holding the line, tasked with helping enforce the blockade and standing by for any ground contingency that might come. Sit with what that actually means. 4 American service members have already died in this war. Their flag-draped transfers came home to Dover Air Force Base just days ago. Somewhere in Washington, planners are weighing options nobody discusses publicly: And the force that would move first if any of those options ever left the briefing room is sitting off the Iranian coast right now on 3 gray hulls, waiting. How long can one Amphibious Ready Group carry that weight alone? That is the question hanging over the Arabian Sea this summer, and nobody, not even the Pentagon, has said the answer out loud. There is one more layer to this story, and it is the kind of detail history seems to enjoy. The Boxer has faced Iran before. In July 2019, almost exactly 7 years ago, this same ship was transiting the Strait of Hormuz when an Iranian drone approached and closed to within 1,000 yards, ignoring repeated calls to stand down. The Boxer took defensive action and brought the drone down. The President of the United States announced it personally from the White House the same day. At the time, it was one of the first direct military exchanges in the long standoff between the two countries, years before the shooting war began. Nobody aboard the Boxer that day could have known what it foreshadowed. The ship involved in one of the opening incidents of this confrontation is now the ship enforcing its blockade. 7 years, one hull, the same 21 miles of water. So what is the USS Boxer doing against Iran right now? She is launching stealth fighters around the clock from a deck older than the pilots flying off it. She is holding a blockade that has already turned away 7 ships and stopped 1 dead in the water. She is keeping 2,200 Marines and their vehicles within reach of the Iranian coast while airstrikes reshape the map behind her. And she is doing all of it as the last big-deck amphibious ship on station, a 31-year-old hull carrying the newest aircraft in the Marine Corps inventory, backed by 2 smaller ships almost nobody ever names. The carriers get the headlines. The stealth bombers get the documentaries. But when the United States needed one ship that could fight in the air, control the sea, and threaten the land all at once, it sent the Boxer. Her sailors and Marines have now been away from San Diego for more than 4 months, with no announced end date, no relief force named, and a mission that changes shape by the week. Deterrence 1 month, blockade the next, and whatever comes after that. The headlines will move on eventually. The ship will still be there. Her name comes from a captured enemy warship 2 centuries old, passed down through 6 hulls like a standing promise. And as long as the Strait of Hormuz stays contested, the 6th Boxer is not going anywhere.